There are women whose presence feels like prophecy. They do not speak loudly, yet everything about them demands attention, not through force, but through gravity. You sense them before you see them. You feel their boundaries without a word. And deep inside something stirs. Not envy, not admiration, but a strange aching familiarity, as if some forgotten part of you recognizes what they carry and aches to remember how to carry it too. You were told confidence was something you earn, that happiness is a goal, a finish line, a reward for obedience. But this illusion has cost you more than time. It has cost you your essence. Because what if the most powerful version of you is not someone you must become, but someone you buried? What if the secret of those unshakable women lies not in what they built, but in what they reclaimed? They are not free from doubt. They have simply made peace with it. They have stood barefoot in their own ruins and declared themselves whole. Their joy is not the kind that shouts from rooftops. It's the kind that whispers through storms. And every time you met one of them, a question was planted in your unconscious. Why does she feel like truth? Why do I feel like a memory of myself when I look at her? But you didn't answer. You kept moving. You swallowed the question with the next task, the next mask, the next compromise. Yet here it is again, resurfacing. Not as an idea, but as a sensation, a tightness in your chest when you laugh without meaning it, a silence in the mirror when you say you're fine. The unconscious doesn't forget. It waits, and it sends signs disguised as tension, desire, discomfort, anything to make you listen. Now the moment has returned. The moment to look deeper, not into others, but into the forgotten script of your own becoming. This video is not about learning something new. It is about remembering what was always yours. But be warned. Once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. And if you skip even 1 second, you may miss the doorway your soul has been circling for years without ever knowing it had a name. She was not born confident. No one is. What you see in her, the calm in her eyes, the gravity in her silence, the unapologetic grace in her stillness, is not something gifted by the stars or inherited through blood. It is the residue of many deaths and quiet rebirths. Confidence, in its purest form, is a scar that has forgotten the pain. You see a woman who seems untouchable, but what you don't see are the nights when her hands trembled under the weight of being misunderstood. What you don't feel is the shame she once mistook as her identity. What you cannot guess is how many versions of herself she had to bury, not because they were wrong, but because they were never truly hers. There is a kind of suffering that doesn't scream. It tightens around the soul like a slow fog. It disguises itself as normalcy, as responsibility, as success. And this woman you admire has known that fog intimately. She has sat in its silence. She has smiled with it in public. And one day, not because of strength, but because of exhaustion, she stopped pretending she didn't see it. That moment changed everything. That was the day she began the descent, not a fall, a return, into the place where all forgotten truths sleep, waiting for the one who dares to remember. You were taught to build your self-worth like a house, brick by brick, title by title, face by filtered face. But what no one told you is that these walls, once built, become a prison. They trap you in a life designed to be admired, not lived. And from within this curated identity, the obedient daughter, the reliable partner, the productive citizen, a silent scream grows. Jung called it the shadow. All that we are but do not allow ourselves to be. All that we buried to survive. All that still breathes under the floorboards of our personality, waiting, watching, whispering. The whisper is always there, isn't it? Beneath your best moments, under your victories. It visits at night, between your sigh and your sleep. It asks questions you pretend not to hear. Is this really you? Whose life are you living? And when you wake, you dress yourself in answers. The kind that silence, not satisfy. But the body remembers, in the slump of your shoulders, in the way joy starts to feel like effort, in the hunger that no food touches, in the laughter that never quite reaches your eyes. You sense it. You are haunted, not by ghosts, but by the self you abandoned to become who they wanted you to be. And maybe that's why she unsettles you. That woman who walks in peace. Not because she's perfect, but because she's no longer pretending. She's not playing the game. She no longer shrinks to be loved or stretches to be accepted. She is not arrogant. She is honest. And that honesty is magnetic because it reflects back everything you've denied in yourself. The strength, the sadness, the desire, the rage, the wildness, and the quiet, ancient wisdom buried beneath centuries of should and must and be nice. Her confidence is not a pose. It is a remembering. And your soul recognizes it like a home it once knew. So you begin to wonder, how did she get there? How do I get back to where I lost myself? But there is no map, no course, no shortcut. There is only the journey inward, and most avoid it because it is the path of fire. Fire that doesn't destroy, but reveals. And here's the hardest truth, that fire is already inside you. Every discomfort, every ache, every unexplained sadness is a spark, and every time you ignore it, the flame grows hungrier, until one day it consumes the mask you've worn for years, and in its ashes, something terrifying and holy is revealed. You. Not the version trained to please, not the one afraid to upset, but the woman who feels deeply, who dares to say no, who doesn't apologize for her hunger, her softness, her rage, her silence. This woman does not seek the light. She is the light that learned to walk through her own darkness. And the moment you stop running from yours, you will begin to see her in yourself, not as a goal to reach, but as a truth to uncover. Because the secret of truly confident women is not that they are fearless, but that they stopped fearing themselves. There was a time when you knew. Before the masks, before the rules, before your name became a performance. There was a moment, brief but sacred, when you moved through the world without needing to be understood. You didn't measure your worth in likes, you didn't armor your heart with logic, and you didn't fear your own depth. You were, not finished, not polished, not even coherent, but present, raw, alive. And then, it began. The slow erosion. Not with violence, but with small suggestions. Don't be so intense. Boys won't like you that way. You're too much. So you folded. You silenced the fire. You began to vanish from yourself. Beautifully. And they called you mature. They praised your adaptability. They rewarded your compliance. But deep down, something ancient protested. A scream too dignified to be loud. A rebellion too sacred to be visible. It took the form of sadness that arrived, without cause, of anger that exploded at the wrong moments, of dreams that kept recurring, the ones you couldn't explain but couldn't forget. That was the self, not the self they shaped, but the self that waits, timeless and true, beneath every layer of adaptation. Jung knew this. He wrote, not of becoming perfect, but of becoming whole. And wholeness requires not addition, but reintegration. Yet how do you reclaim what you've disowned? How do you approach the parts of yourself that were banished not by choice, but by necessity? The truth is, you will not walk. You will crawl. You will not ascend. You will descend into memories you pretended were healed, into moments you labeled as not a big deal, into the eyes of the child you were when no one defended your sensitivity, your power, your need for silence. There is no glamour in this part. There is grief, there is rage, and there is shame. The shame of realizing you were complicit in your own disappearance even if it wasn't your fault. But this is where the story turns, because something strange happens in the underworld of the soul. Clarity. Not the kind you read in books, but the kind that arrives when your tears finally fall without apology. When you stop performing for an audience that isn't even watching. When you allow yourself to be seen first by you, In your anger, in your softness, in your hunger, in your silence, that is where confidence is forged. Not in affirmations, not in routines, not in external validation, but in the raw, trembling act of being with yourself when there's no one else to impress. And here, a threshold appears. It does not look like a door, it looks like a choice. The choice to no longer betray yourself for peace, to no longer water yourself down to be digestible, to no longer beg for scraps of love from those who never learned how to feed their own souls. You may lose people. You may lose comfort. You may even lose the illusion that you were ever truly accepted. But what you gain, my God, what you gain is yourself. Not the idea of you, not the projection, but the woman who never stopped calling your name beneath the noise. The one who knew, even when you forgot, that your value was never meant to be proven, only remembered. And so the spiral tightens, not into confinement, but into depth. You begin to notice what you couldn't before. The tension in your jaw when you say yes but mean no. The fatigue after spending time with people who praise your surface but avoid your essence. The tiny deaths you endure when you laugh at what wounds you just to keep the peace. These are not small things. They are symptoms of a life that looks full but feels hollow. They are signals from the unconscious. And when you begin to listen, truly listen, your reality begins to fracture. Not to fall apart, but to fall into truth. Now I ask you, without filters, without roles, without defenses, when was the last time you recognized yourself? Not the version that survives, but the one that lives. She is not gone. She is waiting. In the moments you avoid, in the places you fear, in the choices that tremble in your chest before logic silences them. And she will not wait forever. The soul grows restless when ignored, and if you do not respond, life will, through discomfort, through disillusion, through events that feel like breakdowns but are, in truth, invitations. There is a woman inside you that the world was never ready to meet. Not because she is dangerous, though she is. Not because she is unruly, though she refuses to bow. But because she cannot be controlled, defined, or broken. She is not polite. She does not ask for permission. She loves deeply, but not blindly. She speaks in dreams and silences, in goosebumps and gut feelings. She moves through the forest of your psyche barefoot, covered in the dust of your forgotten instincts, and she's watching you, always, waiting for you to remember her name. They taught you to be nice, to be desirable, to be soft in the right places, silent in the others. You learned how to smile without showing your teeth, how to cry without making a scene, how to want, but not too much, how to be smart, but not intimidating, how to have ambition, but only if it didn't cost anyone else their comfort, and you mastered it. You became the version of yourself that everyone could love, except you. And that is the tragedy no one talks about, that you can be praised and applauded and still feel like a ghost inside your own skin. But something happens when the woman within begins to stir. She doesn't rise like a queen. She doesn't arrive like a savior. She erupts. She speaks through rage you don't understand, through boredom that poisons your routines, through longing that doesn't make sense on paper. She is the self-reclaiming. It's thrown, not gently, but with thunder. And make no mistake, the moment you stop repressing her, your life will begin to burn. Relationships will shift. Habits will collapse. You will feel lost, alienated, terrified, because the life you built to be loved will not survive the truth of who you are. And that is not failure. That is rebirth. You'll be tempted to go back, to shrink, to apologize, to whisper instead of roar. Because authenticity is lonely at first. It costs you everything built on the lie. And the world will not clap for your return to yourself. But do it anyway. Tear the mask from your face even if your hands shake. Say what your bones ache to say even if your voice trembles. Choose yourself in a world that profits from your doubt. That is the act of revolution. And that is the root of real confidence. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled. by it. And as you walk this burning path, you begin to see her, not the fantasy, but the real woman. She is not always calm, not always composed, but she is present. She is awake. She is whole. She cries without shame. She dances without needing to be watched. She creates, destroys, rebuilds, all without needing to explain herself. Her value is not in what she offers others, but in who she refuses to stop being. And when she looks in the mirror, she does not seek perfection. She seeks recognition. And slowly, with trembling breath, she whispers, "There you are. I thought I lost you." This is the moment many turn away, because seeing yourself truly is not comfortable. It means acknowledging the years spent asleep. It means grieving the parts of you bartered for love. It means facing the guilt of betraying your own essence just to belong. But beyond that grief, beyond that burning, is freedom. Not the kind you post about, the kind you feel when you wake up and no longer need anyone else's permission to exist fully. The kind that makes you weep without sadness, just because you finally feel real. And now the spiral closes in, not to trap you, but to birth you. Again. Differently. Not as a new person, but as the woman you were always meant to be, before the world named you. She is not a concept. She is not a dream. She is not waiting for approval. She is here, and she is rising. There comes a moment, and it always comes, when you stop looking outward. Not because you found what you were looking for, but because you finally understood. It was never there. The love you chased, the security you bargained for, the worth you tried to earn, all of it was a mirage built on longing. And this realization is not peaceful at first. It is brutal. It empties you. You sit inside yourself, naked of illusions, surrounded by echoes of everything you thought would save you. And then something quiet happens. Not a thought, not a belief, a shift, a breath. And you feel it, the beginning of your return. You remember, not with your mind, but with your body. The way you used to laugh without holding your stomach in, the way you used to move when no one was watching, the way you once trusted your own voice before it was taught to obey. These memories are not fragments, they are doorways. Each one opens to a version of you that still exists, untouched by trauma, unreachable by shame. She is not wounded, she is wild, and she is calling you home, not with words, but with sensation. She is not behind you. She is beneath you, rooted, unshaken, waiting to be felt, not found. This is the secret no one tells you. Healing is not about becoming someone else. It is about shedding what you were never meant to carry, the expectations, the performance, the shame inherited from generations of women told to be less. Confidence, true confidence, does not come from achievement. It comes from belonging to yourself. And the most powerful women are not those who rose above their pain, but those who went back for the parts of themselves they abandoned in order to survive. These women do not speak of healing as a destination. They speak of it as a daily homecoming, and when you begin to live this way, not as a theory but as a practice, the world shifts. Not because it changes, but because you do. Your boundaries harden, your voice deepens, your presence becomes undeniable. You stop explaining. You stop negotiating your value. You stop entering spaces where you must hide to be tolerated. You become dangerous. Not because you harm, but because you no longer need to be saved. Your joy returns, but this time, it is sovereign. Your peace deepens, but this time, it is earned. And your love, especially your love, becomes a gift, not a currency. And now you look around, not with arrogance, but with awareness. You see how many still live asleep, how many still mistake approval for belonging, how many women have mastered being everything to everyone, and yet remain invisible to themselves. But you have remembered. And this remembering is irreversible. You will still fall, you will still doubt, but you will never again abandon yourself for comfort. That is the unshakable root beneath the tree. That is the calm in her eyes, the one you noticed at the beginning. Not certainty, not perfection. Just presence, just truth, just the self, whole, holy, and finally home. Not all awakenings come with lightning. Some begin with a silence that you cannot unhear, a subtle dissonance between the life you show and the one you feel, a glance in the mirror that lingers too long, a pause in the middle of a sentence, when the words leave your mouth but something deeper refuses to follow. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand, it waits. Like an old melody buried beneath noise, waiting for the day you finally stop and listen. And if you are listening now, truly listening, then you know something in you has shifted. The space you once filled with performance now echoes with unfamiliar presence. What was once dull begins to shimmer. What was once certain begins to tremble. This is not confusion, this is remembering. And remembrance is not a return to who you were. It is a reunion with what was exiled, a reintegration of everything you denied in order to belong. And when these parts return, your rage, your softness, your voice, your wildness, they do not ask for a role, they ask for a throne. All along you thought confidence was a light you had to build. But what if it's not a construction? What if it's an excavation? What if the flame has always been there, sealed under layers of obedience, survival, and self-betrayal? You were never incomplete. You were only hidden. And now, as the dust begins to settle and the masks loosen their grip, you catch a glimpse of her. Not the woman they praised, not the one you tried to become, but the one who never needed to be explained. The one who existed before the world taught you to be afraid of your own depth, and you begin to see everything you were taught. To silence was a map. Every time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace, you were tracing the edges of your own boundary. Every moment of longing, every quiet ache, every irrational pull was a compass, pointing inward. Your shadow was not your enemy. It was your guide. Your doubts were not flaws. They were questions the soul was brave enough to ask. The pain you carried? It was never punishment, it was a signal. A sacred wound marking the doorway through which only the true self can pass. Now the air feels different. You breathe slower. You blink less. The world hasn't changed, but your gaze has. You no longer search for mirrors. You no longer wait to be chosen. Because you are no longer lost. You are no longer split between who you are and who they need you to be. You are no longer afraid of being too much or not enough. Because the woman who lives in your bones has awakened, and when she speaks, she does not raise her voice. She doesn't need to. Her presence is enough. Her existence is a statement. Her stillness, a storm. There is no guidebook for what happens next. There is only you, walking, stumbling, rising again, as the embodiment of a truth too wild to be caged. The world may not applaud this version of you. It may resist. It may recoil. But that is not your concern anymore. Your allegiance has shifted. It no longer belongs to the past. It belongs to your becoming. And that becoming, it will echo in the way you enter rooms, in the way you hold silence, in the way your eyes no longer seek permission to shine. You are not here to fit. You are here to remind. So let them wonder. Let them misunderstand. Let them call you intense, difficult, unpredictable. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be real. And real women do not shrink. They do not fold. They do not perform. They return to their instincts, to their inner voice, to their truth. And in doing so, they become something terrifying and holy, unforgettable. Maybe this is not the end. Maybe this is the beginning of something your ancestors prayed for but never got to see. A reclamation, a resurrection, not in fire, but in remembrance. And if this touched something in you, if something wordless moved inside your chest while you listened, then you know this is not just a video. This is a mirror, a seed, a moment that will return in your quiet hours when you least expect it. You won't be able to unfeel this, and you shouldn't, so breathe. Let the silence speak. And when you're ready to take your place, and not just as a follower of this message, but as part of the living current that carries it, subscribe to Archimind. Not for content, for connection. Like, comment, share, not because you should, but because something ancient inside you knows this isn't just for you. This is for every woman who forgot, and is now ready to remember. And now, a final whisper. A phrase not meant to explain, but to awaken. The woman you are becoming is the echo of the one you buried. Let her rise.